Hello and welcome back to Causing Nebula. So in today's video, I wanted to react to this video that went viral a few weeks ago about a black woman who moved to Ghana and then she immediately regretted it and decided she wanted to come back to the United States. If you don't know, I am an expat that has lived outside the United States for a very long time. And in the last year, 2025, since the new administration has taken office in the United States, I see so many posts on the internet of people basically threatening to leave the United States, wishing they could go somewhere else and live, kind of romanticizing life outside the United States as if you can just go to another country and take everything and all the luxuries you have in the United States with you. And guess what? That is a massive delusion that a lot of Americans seem to suffer from. So in today's video, I wanted to watch this video and I wanted to go down a list of things that you will have to give up if you decide to leave the United States. So let's get into the video.
But y'all, I'd rather go back to America and deal with the racism in America before I sit here in Africa and deal with the bullshit bribery, the bullshit fraud, the bullshit scams, the bullshit too expensive, the bullshit not having no snacks, the bullshit not having no food, the bullshit electricity, the bullshit hot water, the bullshit what's that shit called that be coming down? The bullshit animals, it's scorpions outside the house, it's big ass spiders, it's big ass lizards, colorful lizards you ain't never seen before, all in the fucking room with you, sleeping with you, all the bullshit people trying to scam you when you go outside thinking you rich, so they trying to get more money off of you. I'm really trying to wrap my head around this shit. I'm really trying to wrap my head around how are Americans coming to Africa and being happy. Please comment down below, because for me, I'm ready to go. And I always used to say, if it's up to me, it will be. And I'm going to go out to Africa and make shit happen. No, I don't want to. I want to take my businesses back to America. I want to open up shop back in America, open up my dentist office, and all the stuff that I was going to do out here in America. Steady electricity. And the only time our electricity get cut off is when we don't pay the bill. And we got it so good now, we got prepaid electricity. So if we forget to pay the bill, we put some money on that prepaid thing and it comes right back on in 2 minutes. In less than 2 minutes. This shit right here didn't come on for 14 hours yesterday. I can't deal. I love the people. Don't get me wrong, when I'm outside, I'm having fun. I love the people. But when I come back to reality, when you come back home, home is where the heart is, right? When you come back home, you're supposed to feel comfortable, you're supposed to be happy. I'm not happy. To live in a house where you look outside and all you see is turkeys and ducks and chickens and sheep and old malnourished cows.
So you've seen that. So this woman went all the way to Ghana to realize that living her life as an American in the United States is a whole lot more privileged than it is anywhere else in the world. And I really want Americans to truly understand this. In my personal opinion, the way that Americans live and a standard of living that is common in the United States is higher than anywhere else in the world. And I know that a lot of Americans will hear that and they'll probably think, Cosmic Nebula, you have no fucking idea what you are talking about. America's awful. There's all these problems. And I'm not saying that America doesn't have a lot of fucking problems, because every country in the world has problems. But while you are shitting on the United States, I want Americans watching this video right now to be aware of things that simultaneously exist only in the United States of America. And remember, I said simultaneously. I am not saying that these things do not exist in other countries. I am saying that you will only find all of these things in the US. And if you are not willing to give up at least half of these things, you better keep your punk ass in the United States. Freedom of speech. This is the very first right that every American gets. And I think that we have gotten to the point where people think that just because a country is developed, that it has freedom of speech. And guess what? A lot of countries have their own version of freedom of speech, but it is a lot narrower than it is in the United States. So if you are going to move abroad and you hate the current administration and you think life in America is awful, make sure the country you go to has freedom of fucking speech. Because a lot of Americans, in my experience, cannot tolerate lack of having the ability to say whatever you think or feel about a situation. A stable democratic government. So a lot of countries in the world are democracies, but just because they are democracies does not mean that they are stable. I saw a video the other day talking about some country in Asia where they said that every single presidency for like 25, 30 years was rife with all kinds of corruption. Almost all the presidents went to jail except for one person. So 10 presidents in a fucking row have been convicted of crime, put in prison, executed in coups, and all of these things. So even though the country is a democracy, it's not a stable democracy. But the United States, regardless of whether or not you like the current administration, we vote in and vote out presidents on a 4-year basis consecutively, almost with no kind of problems. And that's simply not true for a lot of countries. Anti-discrimination laws. This is something that I find a lot of Americans are really shocked by. A lot of Americans I've noticed assume that because a country is developed economically, that this also translates to social development, and it does not. So a lot of countries do not have laws regarding race, regarding sexual orientation, regarding disability status, gender. A lot of countries simply don't have laws on the books regarding these things, and you can be discriminated against in a lot of places in the world for any of these reasons, for your age, for the way you look, for your family's financial status, and there is nothing you can do about it. So you need to consider whether or not the country you are going to has anti-discrimination laws and whether or not they actually enforce those laws. Strict law enforcement is also something that is very American. And I'm not talking about serious crime. I'm talking about minor crimes that basically inconvenience people on a regular basis. Yeah, in a lot of developing countries, they technically have a lot of laws on the book, but culturally and socially, they simply do not follow a lot of them. And I find that a lot of Americans, they go to like South American countries, Southeast Asian countries, Eastern European countries, and they cannot accept the fact that people walk around doing whatever the fuck they want, even though it's technically illegal, and they can't accept that level of inconvenience that doing whatever you want causes. But so if you want to go to another country, you have to some end, in a lot of countries, you have to concede to laws not being followed strictly and not being enforced efficiently. So harsh punishment of criminals. Again, a lot of countries, they do have very harsh punishment for crime, but you will find that even more countries have a lot of punishments for criminals that are not really that harsh. So you see a lot of murderers, a lot of rapists, people who abuse women, people who abuse kids. You see a lot of slaps on the wrist in a lot of countries. Or you will see short sentences like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years for really heinous crimes. And the United States is very strict in this respect because you have a lot of states that still have capital punishment. You have, in the case of stuff like settlements for wrongdoings or wrongful deaths cases, or whenever somebody is hurt or maimed, you have these massive legal settlements that happens into the millions of dollars. And Americans think that this is like standardized around the world. Like, oh, if my child is killed on an amusement park ride in another country, then I'll also be awarded $100 million settlement. Yeah, that kind of thing is very, very American. And you don't see settlements being handed out like that in almost any other country in the fucking world. So free market economy, there are a lot of countries that have free market economies, but I think that Americans will not be able to appreciate just how much we as a people benefit from a free market economy until they go to a country where the government interferes highly in the economy, and the government makes it so that certain companies stay big and certain companies stay powerful, and certain companies monopolize the economy because the economy relies on them. And when you live in countries like that, it is very hard to accumulate any kind of wealth because those countries, because of so much government interference. So the reason why you have so many massive, popular, famous corporations in the United States is because there's a free market economy and there are always people willing to invest in new kinds of ideas. And this is not true in other countries. So the culture of innovation is also something that is very, very American. I'm not saying that other countries don't fucking innovate, because they definitely do, but I think that people don't realize that there is a reason why so much innovation happens in the United States. A lot of countries are very slow to adopt a lot of new and updated things, but I've noticed as an American living abroad the country that I live in, yeah, they are often 5-10 years behind the United States for no reason whatsoever, right? They just have a culture of doing things the way that they are comfortable doing them, even though they technically have access to all of the things that Americans have access to use. They just choose not to use them. People don't often update their skill sets and things. And the culture of America of being very progress and being very on top of innovative ideas and being willing to invest, this is a very American thing. And even a lot of European countries are not as eager as the United States is when it comes to innovation. And this is why so many more things get innovated in the United States compared to a lot of other countries in the fucking world. If you want to go to another country, I hope you're not a creative person, because in a lot of countries, creative ideas are treated with a lot of fucking scorn. So the right to medical care. In the United States, you have the right to seek emergency medical care regardless of whether or not you can pay, right? But I think that Americans don't realize that this is not a right in a lot of countries in the world, and it's not a right in a lot of countries in the world that are fairly developed either. And I think that a lot of people would be outraged by that, but guess what? There's nothing you can do about it, right? Because people think, you know what, I'm going to leave the United States and go to another country, and you think that you're going to take all of these American standards with you, but I guarantee you, you are not doing that, because there are surprisingly a lot of countries where they will not give you adequate medical care, or sometimes they will refuse you medical care simply because you cannot afford to pay. Another one is quality of medical care. So in the United States, whenever I have personally ever seen a doctor, you would see a doctor and the doctor would be in the room at least 10 minutes, right? Doctors, they ask a lot of questions. They check a lot of things. They will listen to you and explain all the details to you about your medicine. They will explain things about the procedure. They will explain things about symptoms, things you can expect. Like, doctors in the US are so informative. And in my opinion, they are a lot more thorough. But people often complain about the cost of medical care in the United States. And I agree that that's something you should fucking be complaining about, because it's very expensive. But the reality is this: because doctors in the United States earn so much more money per one patient, they can spend way more time with one patient. But when you start thinking about countries where the cost to see a doctor is exponentially lower than in the US, guess what? Doctors have to see patients every 60 seconds to 2 minutes in order to make a decent profit. So you will see countries where you will go in to see a doctor and they will just give you medicine quickly and push you out the door. And I think that a lot of Americans are not willing to deal with that type of treatment in medical care if they go to another country. But you have to realize that American standards of medicine, while it's very expensive, I think that doctors are very well trained, and we also have higher standards for culpability and accountability when it comes to doctors. I know a lot of people, they like to talk about, like, I'm going to go overseas to the Dominican Republic, to Turkey, or wherever to get all kinds of cosmetic and medical procedures done. And I'm not saying that in these countries they don't have good doctors, but I'm saying that when doctors do things wrong in a lot of countries, they are not punished as severely as they would have been had you gotten the procedure done in the United States. And if you choose to go to another country to have medical procedures done, there's really nothing you can fucking do about it. Not just as a foreigner, but just as a regular thing, because in those countries, doctors are not necessarily held to the same fucking standard. So if you want to leave the United States, you need to leave the United States also with this in mind. The right to refuse government control. This is probably the most American thing in the fucking world. I often see Americans online talking about how in this Western European country, they have universal health care, and they also have free child care, and they have long paternity leave and maternity leave, and they have long vacations, and they have free universities. They have all of these things that the government seemingly does on behalf of the people. But guess what? All of these things that people benefit from, first of all, they're not free. They have to pay taxes for them. But also, this is the result of a lot of government interference in people's everyday lives. So this extends to everything, right? You cannot live in a country where the government takes great care to keep medical costs down, and then also get upset when you have a government that interferes, or whether or not you're allowed to have certain vaccinations done, right? So I saw the way the pandemic played out in the United States, and Americans basically, of course, did what Americans always do. And they were just basically like, you can't tell us what to do. You can't make us wear masks. You can't make us do this, and yada, yada, yada. And I have the right to go wherever I want. This is all very American. But in a lot of countries, because they have big brother governments that interfere a lot in their daily lives, the population generally trusts the government to tell them what to do. And the government has a lot of power to tell the population what to do, and people mostly follow it. And even if you have your own autonomy and ability to reject, for example, a vaccine, yeah, a lot of these countries, they also don't have anti-discrimination laws when it comes to people who chose to be unvaccinated. So you need to also keep that in mind. You are not going to go off to some other country and just think that you can refuse government control, because in a lot of countries, they accept government control very eagerly because they see the government as being something that supports them. And in a lot of ways they do, but I think that the average American would not be comfortable with that level of interference. Diversity. And this is not just diversity of race. This is diversity of religion, diversity of culture, diversity of thinking patterns and lifestyles. I think Americans really don't grasp fully how diverse the United States is until they go to another country. For the most part, you can really pick any country. A lot of South American countries are almost completely homogenous. And again, homogeny does not just mean ethnic homogeny. I'm talking about cultural homogeny. They mostly live the same, fairly identical lives. They believe similar things, and almost everybody fits this pattern, or at least a large part of the population does. And you even have it to the point where people are intellectually homogenous, meaning that they all have the same opinions about the same issues, and people don't see anything wrong with that. And in the United States, what you'll notice that Americans spend a lot of time talking about ideas, talking about differences of opinions, debating, fighting. Yeah, this is not necessarily very common in a lot of countries. And so if you want to go overseas, guess what? You are going to have to accept, to some degree, the homogeny of the country you decide to go to. And if you cannot accept it, then you will be excluded from it. America is very big on the culture of individualism. Like I said, a lot of countries in the world are still at least culturally and socially homogenous, which means they share a lot of collective beliefs. But Americans, you can take 10 Americans off the street anywhere, and you will have 10 very different people, to the point where they all have different beliefs, they have different religions, they have different lifestyles, right? They have different education levels, but you will not see such high levels of individualisms in a lot of countries. And this is primarily because most countries are ethnically homogenous, but also because a lot of cultures, like I said, are homogenous. And so you cannot just go storming into another country with this attitude like, I'm going to be whoever I want to be, and there's nothing that these people can do about it, because guess what? That society is not America, and people are not necessarily used to that level of blatant individualism. And in a lot of countries, being extremely individualistic in a lot of countries is perceived as very selfish. And so these types of people are often outcast from that society. So access to welfare benefits. I know that right now in the United States, apparently welfare is undergoing some kind of reform. And I know this is a hot issue right now in the US, but the amount of welfare that poor people get in the United States is astronomical. It's outrageous. Other developed countries also have a welfare system, but in my opinion, people in the United States live really fucking well despite being poor. Poor people in the United States are often overweight, and you will not see that shit in any other country. And regardless of the food in the United States, at the end of the day, poor people are given enough money to still buy healthy food. But the ability to buy unhealthy food and then go to doctors provided by the taxpayers to get all kinds of medical treatment as a result of that lifestyle, and also on top of that to get housing, yeah, this is all very, very American. So in a lot of other countries, they either don't have welfare or they do not give you enough welfare to be comfortable. Being on welfare in a lot of countries is an extremely uncomfortable experience because the society does not really support people needing to rely on the government. Most parents, for example, they have to be married in order to survive as a family unit. And when it comes to like older people have to rely on their family members to take care of them in a lot of societies, not the government, not the taxpayer. And I think that a lot of people, they talk about going overseas. If you go overseas as an immigrant, right, because you would be an immigrant in another country, you do not go to any other country in the world and just become a citizen of that country. You have to apply for a visa. They have to give you a visa. There are constraints on that visa. And usually welfare benefits are reserved for naturalized citizens of that country. So you have to also keep that in mind if you are thinking about going overseas. So government funded student loans. I have right now 1 degree, and when I went to college the first time, I got partial grants and I got partial loans, and now I'm going to college for the second time, and the government is still giving me loans provided by the government, even though I am an American citizen living abroad. So a lot of countries do not have this type of government funded loan program. They don't have it at all. So if you want to go to college and your parents can't afford it, too bad. You're literally fucked. Literally fucked. And I know that right now, a lot of people, especially millennials, regret going to college. And a lot of millennials are in a lot of debt. But I think that people don't realize what it feels like not even to have an option. So as an American citizen, at least you have an option, right? If you grow up poor, you at least have an option to still go to college. But for a lot of countries, they have no option outside of their parents paying for it themselves. Stable infrastructure. So in this video that we watched earlier, this woman mentioned how the electricity sometimes goes out, and it's out for hours at a time, days at a time, and there's nothing they can really do about it. So a lot of countries, people think that countries are either developed or they are underdeveloped, but actually a lot of countries are developing. So I would imagine that Ghana is a developing country, meaning that they have some infrastructure, but even though they have a lot of nice things that look good on the surface, under the surface, their power grid is not stable enough to handle the amount of electricity usage. And in a lot of countries, you will find that where they need to shut shit off more frequently, where you can't use as many appliances in your house, where you don't necessarily have access to clean water. And this is developed fucking countries. I'm not talking about third world countries, y'all. I'm talking about countries that look mostly developed. And you will have to go to these countries to realize that you can't drink the fucking tap water and that everybody uses filtered water or they use bottled water. A lot of countries, like I said, they cannot support too many appliances being plugged in on the power grid. And so people simply don't use a lot of appliances, or they use it sparingly. But I would imagine in a lot of South American countries and a lot of African countries, you have cases where power just goes out. And the people in those countries are used to that shit. But Americans are not used to it at all. In a lot of countries, indoor plumbing is still not a thing, even though there are certain parts of the country that are developed. Yeah, a lot of them aren't. And so I think that the average American would not be able to make concessions when it comes to like electricity, clean water, and indoor plumbing. But you need to double check all of these things if you're thinking about leaving the United States. Household convenience. You are not guaranteed to have a dryer in most countries in the world. In the country that I live in, they don't use clothes dryers. Even though you can buy them, houses are not designed to store them, and almost nobody uses them, and the ones that are here are not really well made. So I have been hanging my clothes to dry for years. Indoor heating and cooling being centralized heating and cooling in all parts of a house or a building is, again, something that's very American. In a lot of European countries, they don't have air conditionings inside the house, or they might not have like radiators inside the house. They might use stoves to heat the house. And again, Americans think that all of these comforts that we have are just normal. Like every single developed country in the world, they're going to have air conditioning. And then they go to European countries in Western Europe, and they realize that it's not even common to have an air conditioning there, and people are just used to it and they can just deal with it. But if you are planning to go to almost any other country in the world, just know that you will either not have all of these things, or you will not have at least half of these things, and you have to get used to dealing with that. And in my experience, a lot of Americans have a really fucking hard time dealing with lack of air conditioning and lack of clothes dryer. Widespread grocery variety. I know that it's very popular to really shit on the food quality in the United States. This is another thing that I see everywhere. Just because we have a lot of unhealthy food does not mean we are obligated to eat it, right? America has a fuck ton of unhealthy food, a fuck ton of processed food, literally any kind of processed food you could dream of. I saw recently that they started making, I think, Little Debbie cakes into like ice cream bars. It's anything you could dream of, right? It's the most ridiculous shit in the world. But Americans don't realize that other countries do not have the amount of variety that Americans have. Even when it comes to healthy food, produce, dairy items, vegetables, and things like that, a lot of countries do not have the amount of variety that the United States has. You can go into grocery stores in the United States and see 5, 6, 7, 8 different types of fucking apples, right? You can see fruit from all over the fucking world that was imported. You can go and you can see 30 different types of milk. You can see 6 different colors of bell peppers, right? 3 different colors of carrots, 8 different types of potato. And then all the meat in the world, right? The United States landmass is so fucking huge that we can raise so many cows, so many pigs, so many chickens, goats, sheep, whatever. Whatever you want, we can raise it because the landmass is huge. And so for this reason, the grocery store variety in the United States is astronomical compared to every single other country in the world. And unless you are willing to concede to being able to find anything your heart desires, I would suggest you stay your ass in the United States. So finally, having a spacious house with land and privacy is also something that is very, very American. A lot of countries do not have big ass houses. I know Americans, they really love to complain about like, oh, you know, America, they need to build more walkable cities. Guess what? If you build a lot more walkable cities, one thing that they are going to have to do is also downsize the size of every fucking thing so that everything isn't still far fuck away from everybody, right? You have big ass houses in the United States where bedrooms in the US are huge. And I know Americans think like, this is a normal size for things. Yeah, in other countries, bedrooms are probably 30 to 50% smaller than bedrooms in the United States. And they especially don't have as many rooms in the house like the United States does. They don't have a lot of dead space like dining rooms and shit like that. Like this is considered extreme luxury in a lot of countries. And a lot of countries are also so small that they don't have even land surrounding their houses. Or a lot of countries, they live in apartments primarily. In order even to see grass, they have to go outside and go down the street to the local park. But Americans, they want big houses and they want some kind of yards attached to their houses so their kids can play and put out swimming pools and all of this type of stuff. And they want their privacy and at least distance from their neighbors. But if you go to an outrageous amount of countries in Africa, in Asia, in South America, in Europe, you are not going to be able to access anything even close to what you are used to in the fucking United States. So if you are an American and you think I'm going to move to another country because I hate the current administration and life in America is miserable and I hate everything, yeah, you are going to have to either give up your rights, some of your freedoms, or some of your worldly comforts, because there exists no scenario in which you can keep all of these things and move to any other country in the world. Like I said at the beginning of this video, as an expat that has lived outside of the United States for a very long time, I enjoy the place that I live, but at the end of the day, guess what? I can see why life in America is exponentially better than life here. Yeah, the healthcare here is cheaper, but the doctors are not as good as they are in the United States. And if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that I have stage 3 kidney failure. And when my kidney disease gets bad enough, I'm going my black ass right back to the United States of America to receive further treatment. Not only a transplant, but also just generalized treatment, in my opinion, is better in the United States. And I also don't have access to a lot of comforts that Americans have in the United States. And also, I don't have a lot of access to rights and freedoms that I would have had I stayed in the United States. But I am a kind of person where I am flexible enough to basically adapt to whatever environment that you put me in. But I can admit myself, despite living abroad for a long time and enjoying my time here, that there are a lot of limitations for me as an American living everywhere else but inside the United States. So you also need to consider that yourself before you hop on a plane, give up your citizenship, and go anywhere else in the world. Never forget that America is considered a very desirable country to go and live in. And the reason for that is because people recognize all of these little privileges that Americans have all combined together that they don't have at the same time in the countries that they live in. And this is why so many immigrants still to this day want to go to the United States in spite of the high healthcare, in spite of the current president, in spite of the crime, because there are a lot more benefits than there are negatives. And I wish Americans would get that through their motherfucking heads. This has been a Cosmic Nebula video, and I will see you in the next one.